So if you've watched my latest videos, we've talked a lot recently about how fire rate in this game is modified by your FPS or frame rate. As crazy as that may sound, we can show significant differences in the time it takes to empty a magazine between 60 FPS and 140 FPS. However, with the advent of weapon cores giving us a lot more fire rate recently, people have been complaining that on higher fire rates, not all of their bullets are getting shot and recognized by the game. But every single person who made this complaint was never able to prove it. They'd simply say it felt that way, or they'd argue that a mod didn't gain as many stacks as normal without actually showing it do damage on an enemy. And every single test that people tried to do to show this was flawed. So I have taken the time to test this out in a way that will end this discussion for good. So let's talk about how I did the test first so I don't get second guessed by little twats in the comments later. The basic theory is, if people are right, and after a certain fire rate you start to lose damage because not all bullets are fired, then that means in a controlled scenario, if we're shooting at a Colossus, as long as we aren't killing them, if we shoot at the boss with a low fire rate, and then we shoot at the boss with a high fire rate, in both cases, as long as the individual damage of each shot doesn't change, the boss should be missing the same percent HP across all of your tests, because it doesn't matter how fast you're firing it, as long as the damage is the same, the percent HP will be the same. Simple, right? I did take it a step further though, and I repeated this test on the boss 4 different times across 30 FPS and 140 FPS each, at 4 different fire rates. I also used the amplification mod to eliminate our crit damage multiplier, so even though some of the numbers you'll see here are crits, the damage of the crit itself is the same as a non-crit due to our lacking damage multiplier. The long and short of which is simply that I went out of my way to eliminate any possible damage variance, and in that same vein, I did these tests on Molten Fortress. The reason for which is any other boss, it's very easy to accidentally hit a weak point on their body since they move so damn much, but for consistent damage, I needed 100% of my shots to land on the body. Another benefit of using Molten though as my test dummy was simply that he was extremely easy to stay next to without accidentally triggering the weapon damage fall off. There is literally nothing in here that could cause variance except for the game itself. The test steps though were simply booting up Molten, petting my dog while waiting for him to become damageable, and then unloading 3 separate magazines into him before screenshotting the HP bar and leaving. The reason for 3 magazines is just that 1 magazine might show a small difference, but 3 magazines will show the difference in a much more exaggerated way over a larger number. When it came to the results, we'll talk about the 30 FPS first. At 800 and 1000 fire rate, the results are virtually identical. It's going to be pretty much impossible to find any meaningful difference between the two. However, at 1333 fire rate, we do see a significant damage loss, and at 1818 fire rate, the difference is equally pronounced. What makes this crazy though, is if we look at 140 FPS, the results are pretty much the exact same, with a slight difference at the 1333 fire rate range, which just could be an outlier, because the 1818 fire rate is missing the exact same percent as the 30 FPS test. The takeaway for this is that we have 2 distinct problems in the game. The first of which is that fire rate does get modified by your frame rate. We've proven this 6 fucking different ways by now, and that's a separate issue we can prove. The game simply cannot keep up once your fire rate starts to go over 500 or so. The separate problem from that though, and the new issue, is that the higher your fire rate goes, the more damage you do actually lose, which is a bit of an oxymoron, because if you're watching my other videos, you already understand that the higher your fire rate goes, the closer your rounds per second scales to infinity. But even if we're scaling close to infinite rounds per second, the issue now is that we aren't entirely certain how many bullets we lose in that process, because just eyeballing it, at 140 FPS, the difference between 1333 fire rate and 1818 fire rate is a 25% damage loss, but keep in mind that is total damage, not DPS. The fire rate FPS issues were certainly annoying to find out about, but this game is straight up deleting your bullets, and guys, that's stupid as shit.